Welcome back on this Wednesday, May 3rd, Indiana Sports Beat Radio from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. And very, very happy and to welcome in a special guest, Mr. Dyar Miller. He is a former Major League Baseball player, 7 years in the majors for the Mets, Blue Jays, Angels, and the Orioles. Coached for over 2 decades, mainly with the Cardinals organization, but some with the White Sox. As well. So we've got a whole bunch of crossover with our friend Rick Bozich, who grew up a White Sox fan from the region. He's a region rat, then spending his career down in Louisville, and the Redbirds were the Cardinals AAA team for the Redbirds were Cardinals AAA team in Louisville there for a long time, from 83 through the mid-2000s, I think. But just in a great run of those Cardinals teams. Rick, first of all, thank you so much, Dyar, for coming on. We appreciate you and welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be here. Good to be with you. You're talking baseball anytime. Good to see Rick.
Hey, good to see you, Dyar. Those were great years, man. Talk about them all the time.
Yeah.
Rick, talk about it. Yeah, I was going to say, the talent that came through there, I remember, I was like, oh my God, I think back, whether it's Andy Van Slyke, Vince Coleman, all these big-time names that were in Louisville before they got to become what they were in St. Louis. The Redbirds, man, they were unique in a lot of ways, but they produced a ton of talent. It's not a lot of guys that make it to AAA, make it to the big league. But boy, the Cardinals really had an incredible farm system.
They did. We had some really good players. But, the thing I remember about Louisville is that we drew some crowds there. We had, in 83, we drew over 1 million people.
First time it ever happened.
Outdrew the Pirates. The fans were awesome there. I'm playing in that old stadium there at the fairgrounds. That was neat. There would be 40,000 every night in August. It was a fun time.
Yeah,
and
it became happening.
Vince Coleman. Oh my, Gene Ruff. There's just some good players come through there. Mike Calise, good hitter. Joey Disa.
The first year was Willie McGee and Andy Van Slyke, and Todd Worrell was there. Joe McGrain. Exactly. Tom Nieto, who was a catcher, was really good. Right. David Green, Tito Landrum, who broke my heart in 1983 when he hit the home run for the Orioles to beat the White Sox in the first game of the playoffs.
Right.
Ray Langford, Terry Pendleton. I could go on and on, man.
John Stuper.
Ken Hill, John Stuper, who won a game in the World Series and later became the baseball coach at Yale.
He's still there, I believe.
Is he?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Before we get further into your coaching, talk about your playing career some. You played with 4 different teams. Like I said, the Orioles, the Angels, the Blue Jays, and the Mets. Was there a favorite organization? You can say it now. They're not listening.
I actually signed as the catcher with the Phillies, had a little cup of coffee and a ball, and then got released and signed back as a pitcher. With the Orioles. And I would say the Orioles, I spent 6 years in their minor league system, but that's one of my favorites. And they're playing pretty darn good right now. And I follow them pretty close because the general manager, the pitching coach, the assistant general manager were in Houston and St. Louis with me. So I was in Baltimore last year for a couple of games. And then I worked after I retired at the end of 18, I worked spring training with them, 19 and 20. So I know some of those guys in the front office and some of the players. They got some real good young players, Baltimore.
Yes,
of course,
really
if you're in the big leagues, any place is a pretty good place to play. That's where you want to play.
What was your favorite moment as a player?
Well, getting called up to the big leagues on my 29th birthday, May 75, May 29th, 75. And then
you don't remember exactly what date or anything like that, do you?
No. but I had to fly. We were in Richmond, Virginia, and I had to fly to the West Coast because the Orioles were playing the Angels. So it was a fun ride out there. And then, hey, my second one's kind of infamous. I gave up Hank Aaron's 743rd home run.
No.
It was kind of, and I got the save in that game, so no damage. Earl was happy. Earl Weaver. He was happy.
How many packs of cigarettes did he smoke when you pitched?
Oh boy! Oh, he was puffing. He was puffing.
Did you play with Ed Farmer at all?
Excuse me. Oh yeah, I played with Ed Farmer in Puerto Rico in 1974.
Oh wow!
At Santurce, so Frank Robinson was our manager, and then he got the Cleveland job. About a month into the season, he left. But yeah, Ed was a character. He was down here in Indianapolis, where I live now, and gave a talk to the Old Timers Club. That's probably been 8-9 years ago, and I know he passed here a couple of years ago. But what a great guy! Awesome guy, good competitor. He would do some goofy things, like drive his hey, in Puerto Rico, drive his Volkswagen down the sidewalk, go around traffic. But great guy, awesome.
And Rick, when Dyar was in Louisville, again, like I was going back and talking earlier, those teams, not only was it fun, the crowds were there because A. Ray Smith, he had to be the greatest guy in the history of planet Earth to work for. But he was the owner, and he made it a circus, and the people came out. But they were also great teams. They won. Like we talked about that talent earlier, they were winning. And so it was a hell of a combination.
Yeah, I mean, it was just phenomenal what Avery did. He was a salesman. He was a showman. He would come to the park and he'd walk through the stands and talk to fans and get them engaged. He'd find different ways, different kind of promotions to get people to come out. And he started selling the season before it even began in January every year. He always had this big preseason banquet or whatever it was. And he'd bring in Mickey Mantle, Billy Martin, Keith Hernandez, Stan Musial. All these legendary baseball guys would come in and fans could get autographs and actually sit and talk to them. And I'm sure you were there for a couple of those, Dyar. And he got it. He came from a different era of promoting the game. And he brought the team here actually from Springfield, Illinois. And Louisville had been without baseball, I think, from 1972 to 1981. It was the largest city in the country that didn't have pro baseball. And there was a tremendous appetite for it. And you know, Joe Frazier managed the first year, and then they brought Jim Fregosi in the second year. And he actually stayed here 3.5 years before he went to the White Sox.
That's right.
And I used to go to games, I don't know, 2 or 3 every homestand just to come and talk to Dyar and talk to Galen Pitts and talk to Fregosi. I love getting old baseball stories from those guys.
Yeah. Fregosi was a treat. People ask, who's your favorite manager? Well, for me, it was Jim because he was good to me. He was kind of my mentor. He helped me stay in the game of coaching and just a super guy. And, he met his wife down there,
Joni.
And they have grandkids now. So it's been a while ago. Time flies, but we had a great time. Hey, Ray was great to play for. He gave, I think meal money was about $15 a day back then, and A-Ray gave us 25, the players. So that made all the other teams jealous. But, we had to make some appearances for him. We'd go up they had this famous stadium club.
Yes,
upstairs. They did. Players would go up there and mingle with the fans, and it was an awesome atmosphere. Really
Do you remember the bartender's name? I sent you a text about this.
I thought it was Danny.
Well, that is his real name. Herbie was
Herbie?
like I guess that was his nickname, but Danny was his real name. Yes.
Yeah, Danny was his real name.
I think
that's his real name.
I think he worked for Lancasters across the.
Well, I think he originally did, but A-Ray basically bought him out.
Yeah.
He used to work for A-Ray.
Right. A-Ray loved to eat lunch too at Hassenauer's. That was his go-to place.
Oh,
which
that's
isn't
right.
open anymore. He'd always, whenever you'd want to meet A-Ray, he'd say, "Let's have lunch at Hassenauer's."
That's correct. Yeah. Well, you talk about selling tickets. One year, I stayed down there and worked in the front office for A-Ray, and I had to run errands for him, make calls, call season ticket holders. One day he said, "Hey, Dyer, Mickey Mantle's coming in, flying into the airport. I want you to go pick him up, take him over to New Albany, and he's going to speak at this luncheon over there. And then bring him back. We'll have a few drinks in the club." I said, "Okay." Hey, I think it was 26th of January, pretty icy. So I got Mickey over there. You could walk right up to the gate in those days, pick him up, and I took him over there. And about 2 minutes before he was going to talk, the guy sitting next to me said, "Hey, you got to introduce Mickey." And I had no prep for it or anything. So I just stood up and said, "Hey, greatest player of all time, number 7, Mickey Mantle." Mickey got some good laughs. He really aired me out on that one. But hey, on the way back, he got an envelope in cash. They paid him cash. He got a nice envelope there. And on the way back, he opens up the envelope and peels me off 10% for taking him over there. That's the kind of guy Mickey was. What a great guy.
Wow. Yeah. That's a great story.
Very nice. Now, was this after he had stopped drinking?
No, he had a few we had a few that night.
I was just curious because I was like, I was wondering who survived, because he was notoriously good at very successful drinker as he was.
Nice guy. He would talk. He and Billy Martin. I've been with him and Billy Martin in some of those. Man, there's some good baseball stories.
Oh my gosh, I cannot imagine sitting. Rick? Can you imagine sitting at a bar listening between those two?
No.
And you got Dyer there, and you got Billy Martin there, and you got Mickey Mantle. Woo!
Well, and usual would always come and play the harmonica.
Yeah, he would. Hey, I was just listening. I didn't participate much in those stories. But hey, Rick mentioned before about those dinners. One year, I think it was '84, like in January. I still have the picture. There was 22 Hall of Famers at that dinner.
Wow!
He called it the Diamond Dinner. I got the picture of it. I still have it. I saw it the other day. 22 Hall of Famers. That was a nice crowd. Warren Spahn was there.
Warren Spahn for sure. Yeah, that's A-Ray. He loved baseball, and he had a lot of respect for the players, and that was a very important thing for him every year. And you know how Cardinal Nation is anyway. I mean, the St. Louis Cardinals are a unique franchise in baseball. The following they have in town and then regionally throughout this part of the country. Exactly. People listening to KMOX and Jack Buck and Mike Shannon, RIP, and the whole Cardinal thing. And A-Ray was a part of it.
Right. We would take caravans in southern Indiana and northern Kentucky before we went to spring training. And Billy Martin and Mickey would ride with us sometimes on those caravans. We went to Jasper one day, Jasper, Indiana, and we played an exhibition game right before the season started.
Gee whiz.
Wow.
The coach down there still talks about it. He said, "Boy, that was great. You guys come down there and played." So
phenomenal.
He was a real good promoter. He was awesome.
Well, Jasper's still a hell of a baseball town, so they picked the right spot. Scott Rowland just went into the Baseball Hall of Fame from Jasper. Also lives on Lake Monroe, ironically.
Right. He's
I
just
don't know
around
how many
the corner.
miles around.
He's just behind my back here, behind me a ways.
Could you hit him with a cat? Could you cast a line and hit him?
I probably could. I talked to him a couple of weeks after. I saw him at an event up in Noblesville a couple of weeks after he got elected. Yeah, he's well deserved. What a great guy. Good player.
Absolutely. And just a super person.
Outstanding.
Just an incredible person. Rick, when you see guys like Dyer that spent all this time in these different organizations that you got to follow, man, you got that's childhood memories and work memories, career memories. That's a lot of stuff that fortunately all kind of folded together.
Yeah, I mean, deep down inside, I'm a baseball fan. It's my favorite sport. Always has been, always will be, ever since I was a kid. I remember First time my grandfather took me to a game at Old Comiskey Park, White Sox against the Red Sox. Ted Williams was still playing at the time. They had Pumpsy Green and a few other dudes. And when you walk into the ballpark at ground level and walk up at Old Comiskey, it was the old 8 or 10 steps, and then the whole green field unfolds in front of you. You're just like, you're mystified. You're captivated for the rest of your life. And, I'd go to ball games as much as I could. Whether I was a paper boy, I'd win a contest, free trip to a White Sox game, or our church would go, free trip to a White Sox game. I'd always go, and I've held that love of baseball ever since. The White Sox aren't very good this year, 9-21, but of the 30 games, I bet I've watched 27 of them. Watched the whole game last night. So I appreciate guys like Dyar. When he was here, he was always so accommodating and generous with his time. And as I mentioned many times, Jim Fregosi. If Jim, this is my belief, if Jim sensed that you really liked baseball and you were into baseball, he would sit there and talk with you forever. I sat in his old office, and he would tell me all these old stories about Frank Robinson and Al Kaline and Rod Carew and all these dudes, and I was like, I just couldn't get enough of it.
Right. Yeah. He was Jim was awesome. A very smart, a good card player. We used to play cards a lot, but a real good baseball guy. Really smart. A lot of times I don't think he had the team to win, but he got the most out of them.
Yeah, he did.
If he would have got a little more help from front office, a couple places, I'm sure he'd been in several World Series.
And Dyer, what you've got to spend your career at different places, but also really got to set some roots at some places, which is not always the case for people. And at some places that really appreciated you, whether it was St. Louis or Louisville. That has to be special for you to be able to still not just relive that, but be able to run into someone like Rick, who was a part of that.
Well, no question about it. I grew up as a Cardinal fan when I was 7 years old, and I said, "Hey, I'd like to play in the big leagues." My mom helped me out a lot. She listened to ball games, and hey, I was 29 before I got to the big leagues, but I've ran into some amazing people, and there's some great people in baseball. It's a great fraternity. You can't beat it. I've got to go to Mexico and play 2 years. I played in Puerto Rico, so I'm Dominican, and Venezuela. So I got to travel a lot, and I've been very fortunate. And I can remember Earl Weaver, talking about reporters. I got in a little scuffle with a reporter one time in Baltimore, and he called me in and he said, "Hey, Dyer." I tried to be friendly with everyone, but he said, "Hey, Dyer, you got to remember that writers and reporters, the media is a part of this game. They keep it going. They're very important." That Earl was pretty smart. He was good at that, and so was Fregosi. They were good baseball people. And
Earl's a good TV
guy. We need writers. We need reporters. We need that in the game to spread the good news.
Earl knew how to use the TV as well, I think.
Yeah. Oh, he did.
He was one of the most colorful managers of his era, I guess.
Who was the famous nose argument? Was that him and Ron Luciano? Was that who it was? I think it was.
I can't remember who it was. I just remember you couldn't do that today. But yeah, just great stuff.